Thank you for joining us wherever you are. This podcast episode is brought to you by the Old Ways Actual Play Team. This actual play uses the 7th edition Call of Cthulhu tabletop role-playing game rules by Chaosium. This actual play is performed by adults and in an adult setting. While we try very hard to stick to language for all ages, listeners should know that this podcast may include mature themes. All content, including names, places, events, companies, and etc., that may bear resemblance to entities living or dead, is strictly coincidental. My name is Michael Diamond, and for tonight's game, I will be your keeper. Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Old Ways podcast. I'm your keeper, Keeper Michael, and I welcome you back to Horror on the Orient Express. I am joined today, as every day we sit down to record, by our cast. So introductions will begin to my right.
I'm Mike, and I'm playing James Robert Fraser.
Good. And to his right.
Hi, I'm Rena, and I'm playing Lady Elisabeth Fitzroy.
And at the end of the table.
Hi, I'm Giles, and I'm playing Simon Griffith.
To Mr. Griffith's right.
Hi, I'm Miranda, and I'm playing Maggie Bellinger.
And last but most certainly not least.
I'm Martin, and I'm playing Richard Courtney.
We lift the curtain tonight after some rather troubling details arose in our last episode. It seems that the Fitzroy family had something pop up it was not expecting. Beyond that, it also seems that the house that they've decided to visit may have more secrets in it than it truly first saw. And so we lift the curtain this evening on the nighttime there at Maplebrook. And in the study, Professor Courtney is examining a piece of Latin literature. And just nearby, Lady Elisabeth has entered.
I'm sitting in a chair with a brandy and warm milk staring off into the distance thinking while I wait for the professor to finish whatever he's doing.
I'm sorry to bother you. Do you have a moment?
Yes, it was the book, wasn't it? You wanted me to look at earlier?
Yes, that's right. You explained that you can read Latin. Is that right?
Yes. It wouldn't do to be a student of the occult otherwise.
No, indeed. I'm afraid I'm rather more focused on the sciences and that aspect of things. But if you wouldn't mind taking a look at this page here, it contains a picture of a couple of gentlemen with a key. I didn't know if it was perhaps related to the key in the book that you have. And Richard will pass the book over.
Okay. So what he shows you is a page with quite a bit of detail and intricacy. Some rather painstaking work has been done, not only in the margin lines and at the top of the page, but also there's been some detail and picture put into the actual facing of the page. Red and black text give you a fair look at what's going on, but I will give you prepare to give you the translation if you'll dive into it for me.
Okay. Do I need to roll or?
Yes, you will need to roll.
Okay. Oh, this is quite interesting. It's been very well illuminated. So against my Latin of 50, that is a 35.
Okay. Yeah, it's going to take you a little time to piece some things together. It'll probably take you a good at least 30 minutes because Latin is it's a known subject to you, but that doesn't mean it doesn't take a bit of work to go back and forth through. Professor, she seems to be looking it over rather intently. You can tell that you can just watch her eyes back and forth move almost like a telegraph machine, just back and forth until she gets near the end of it.
What do you make of it? Does it make sense at all?
It's a little difficult. It's the way it's done in this text. The handwriting in particular can make the words run together, but I've managed to piece together a few things, I think.
Do you think it's relevant, or?
I don't know if you've read any Latin texts in translation, but they tend to be very mysterious and vague about things. But it seems to be about imagination, imagining things, and the rules of the intellect, and understanding what the imagination can do. It's very interesting.
Yes. Do you think perhaps it has a bearing on the locks on the book? Perhaps... No, that doesn't make sense. But perhaps...
It might. I'm just picking through a few things here. It's talking about goats and wolves in one place, which is interesting. I'm wondering if it refers to your machine, Professor. It's very imaginative, that sort of thing.
I hadn't considered that.
It reminds me of, well, you might laugh, but magic, of spells, but in a very sort of formulaic, mathematic way.
Well, it's funny you should say that. I mean, I do believe that many of the unexplained things that we've observed in history books and that kind of thing did ultimately have a rational scientific explanation. I mean, imagine showing something like fire to someone who had never seen it, or the electric light bulb to somebody who'd only seen fire. I mean, these magical spells you speak of, even today, may appear to be somewhat bizarre and mystical, supernatural almost, but there must be some common scientific explanation. Perhaps it could be modelled, so it's not so out of the way.
Yes, that makes sense. I knew we'd get along. But it doesn't seem to relate to the key itself, though. As you mentioned, there's this drawing here. Could be the key to the imagination, I suppose. But it's talking about magnets and iron, and we imagine things, and how we can use our brains to imagine things, and how we understand imagination based on our intellect.
Do you think perhaps this could have influenced your father? Maybe he would have hidden the keys for your book in a place. It's a stupid thing. Whether you have a statue of a wolf or something, maybe he's hidden the keys in there or something like that.
Well, that's an interesting idea, but wolves aren't really the Northbrook family crest sort of thing.
No, I don't think I'd seen anything quite like that here, but...
No. It is a conundrum. Was there anything else you needed me to look at with this book, Professor? Was it just this page?
Well, I mean, if you could maybe borrow the book. I mean, I guess it's yours already. And, perhaps if you have some time, there may be other pages of interest. I don't speak Latin. I was just drawn by the picture here, this engraving. But it's certainly possible that there are other things there.
Yes. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. I'll spend some time looking through it this evening.
Thank you.
Okay. So, after the professor takes his leave and probably heads back to, I don't know, another study, or perhaps the parlor, I don't believe, and Mr. Fraser, you can correct me, I don't believe you've made hard plans to stay the night?
We've had rooms made up for Mr. Courtney and Mr. Griffith. I think these things are subject to change, though.
Sure.
If required.
Richard, you probably would go back to your room. Lady Elisabeth, you're likely going to, after your relaxing beverage, the plan will be to find this key.
Yes. That's what I intend to do.
Where would you like to start?
Well, first I'd want to check Father's desk, and if he had any other kind of furniture where he stored papers, or even his alcohol cabinet, I suppose. He had a fairly extensive one, just in case, because Raymond wouldn't have likely moved things.
The desk, for the most part, seems to have been well, you're not the first person to have your hands in here, it seems, which isn't surprising. Raymond's had the house for about a year now at this point, and it's likely he's at least stopped in at one point and seen if there was anything in there. Although most of the papers and your father's effects that are in accordance with his desk don't appear to be too disheveled. I mean, things are in relatively decent order. But the concern you have is it does appear that some of the drawers here still won't open. Your father seemed to have some sort of trick to his desk, and you're concerned, even after a few reasonable tugs, that you might have to break something to get into the desk.
Yes, well, I don't think I'm very scrupulous about that at the moment. Raymond can always have it fixed. I doubt he'd even notice until a few weeks later.
Okay, so I guess the question is are you going to break into your father's desk?
Absolutely.
Wonderful. So I'm not going to make you roll for anything. I think the
Thank
determination of you doing it is enough for me. Although I will say this, you do have to use a bit of leverage, and that leverage is provided by your cane.
Okay.
And in doing so, you do get the desk door open, but you're fairly certain that the cane, the phoenix head and all, is a little cracked, and so you'll have to see to it at some point.
I'll have Fraser get me another one made when we get back to town, I suppose.
All right. There are 3 doors on the left-hand side. Are you going to work top to bottom or bottom to top?
Probably bottom to top to minimize how much time I have to kneel or crouch.
Sure. You have the availability of the chair, but the issue is going to be leaning over for that long. So
Exactly.
You start with the bottom. The bottom part of the desk has, the desk drawer has several document cases. So these look like, at least at first glance, as you begin to unwrap them and open them up, they look like some sort of financial documents. They look more like stocks or deeds, maybe ownership rights. It looks like there's a lot of as you leaf through them, you see that there's a lot of names of your father's horses. So it might be the paperwork associated with his equestrian activities.
Oh, Raymond will want to see that.
It seems that he owns not only horses here, but in several different places, which isn't surprising to you in any means, but it is something that you weren't aware of. Like, he has horses in France at some of the breeding areas there.
I'll sketch down in my notebook just the names of places, just in case I need, who knows, on this journey, who I might need to talk to or borrow a ride from.
Sure. Beyond that, some of the other documents here are more letters from family members. So these would have been letters dated mid-1800s. They look like they're maybe your grandfather's letters. Hard to tell. You haven't seen a whole lot of his handwriting to date. It does seem that they're letters maybe sent back from a war. Hard to tell. You'd have to read through quite a bit of them to get a handle on it. But the dates are relatively easy. It would say between 1864, between that and say maybe 1870.
I take those.
Okay.
Don't want Lady Margaret getting her hands on them.
And second drawer, as you move your way up, has quite a bit of stationery associated materials with it. So stamps, inkwells. It seems that he was rather fond of not only black ink, but blue ink as well. There's several vials of it here. And in your cursory examination of those ink vials, you see that there's one all the way in the back. You have to reach quite a bit to get it. But there's one that is this kind of brownish orange color.
That's odd. I'm just gonna look over the vial or the jar and see if there's anything about it, because I'm not used to this color.
Oh, the pot is totally different. So it doesn't match the containers the other ones are in. There's no label on it, and the glass looks homespun. It does not look like a manufactured pot, like you see the rest of the vials.
Does it have like a wax seal on it, or how is it?
Yeah, it is definitely sealed. And just by looking at some of the associated markings on it, looks like it's been used very sparingly.
So I'm going to take that.
Okay.
And is there a particular pen or anything that looks like it might have been used with? And if so, I'd like to take that as well.
So you do find a quill case that goes with it. It's right alongside of it. And this quill case, probably in a modern sense, would look like a case for glasses that we would. So it's in that kind of stead. And the quill in it is rather peculiar. It's a sharp quill for sure, but the handle on it is what is strange. And so it rears back from the nib in a fairly well circular state. So it seems to be good for grasping. But the back end of the quill comes in almost like this hook pattern, so it's not as long as a normal quill would be. It's almost like half that length, and it almost seems to curve around where the meaty part of the thumb would be, as if it's not made for an adult hand, or definitely not a man's hand. At first breath, you would say this was not your father's quill.
Interesting. I'm going to slip it into my bag along with the ink, and I'll ruminate on it later, but I'm aware I don't have a whole lot of time. So I push that off to the side. I'll think about it later. I'm going to keep looking for my primary object.
Okay. You get to the top drawer. This one was the one you really had to wrench on with the cane to actually get this is where the leverage point is in the desk. And so you had to really wrench on it with the cane to get it open. When you get it open, there are very few items in here. You see a watch. You're fairly certain you remember that your father would have that on certain occasions. It's a pocket watch. It's very well made. It was made by a man in London. You'd seen him check it more than a few times in your childhood. There is a bit of fabric in it in the desk drawer as well. It's a light fabric. It's green. Has a beautiful pattern of flowers, light blue, yellow, red, that kind of splay along the outside. The flowers dance a bit as you inspect the fabric. Not on their own, of course, but as you roll them over, you can see it's almost as if there's a bit of motion to the artistry. It is not something your mother would have worn.
Does it look like a handkerchief or?
Yeah, it does. There's no embroidery on it to denote initials or anything. It doesn't look like it would be. I guess your biggest tip-off is it's not quality enough to be something that a member of family would use. This is something that is much more common.
It's definitely not something that Raymond's wife would use.
No.
So I will wrap the pocket watch up gently in this piece of cloth and set it on the desk. I'm thinking about whether or not I'm going to take that with me. And then I'll keep searching the drawer.
You little looter. No.
Yes.
In the back of that drawer, you find a very small wooden frame. And in that small wooden frame, you find a picture of a woodland scene. So the picture itself is maybe about a 3x5 or so picture, give or take. This is a photograph, okay? So it's not a drawn picture or a sketch picture. And the scene is of a woodland scene in the background, but there is a very tanned woman who's standing in it. Very simple dress. She has shoulder-length, straight black hair. Probably comes down to about the top of her chest. She's staring directly into the photographer's lens. And there is something that is core shaking about seeing this woman in a picture. Because you've seen this woman before. The last time you saw her, she was standing on a rock. And she was chanting words that are still yet undecipherable by your name, but by their name. And she was pouring this fluid down onto your father. This is her.
So I stare at it for a second and then just sort of drop it almost in disgust when I make the connection. And then I very sigh, gingerly pick it up and put it in my bag. Because maybe with this picture I have a chance of finding out who she is. Because that seems very important now.
Door to your father's office opens. Raymond walks in, shuts the door behind him. He's obviously probably a good 30 feet away.
Oh, hello.
Did you find something?
Yes, I was looking for a pen and some ink. I know Father always kept some in here. I seem to have forgotten mine, and I wanted to write in my journal.
Dusty old place. He looks around and goes to one of the side tables, picks up a pen. Father left these things all over the place. He sets it on the top of the desk for you.
Thank you.
Are you staying?
The night, yes. I don't particularly feel up to taking the very last train tonight, and I'd rather go in the morning.
Good. How'd you fall in with an American?
Oh, he kind of comes with the professor, I suppose. It's a bit complicated.
No doubt. It sounds like a grand adventure.
Yes, well, you know how I'm about adventures. Can't resist.
Yes. Well, I hope you won't think terribly of me that I've had a word with Fraser then.
No, but you did rather terrify him.
He's a good man, but I wanted to make sure that my point was made.
Yes, well, I rather think it was. Don't worry too much, Raymond. I'll be fine.
You always say that.
Yes, and I'm still here, so...
This business, does it have you worried?
With our presumed bastard brother? A little bit.
Yes.
More worried about Mother.
It's not an open secret yet.
Raymond, I promise I will see if I can find out anything for you. I do have some potential people I could speak to, send Fraser on some errands in that sort of direction. I don't know if I can be much help, but I might have some leads. I'm in town more than you are, you know, and have more connections in London, so I'll see what I can find out for you.
Well, we're digging in, so you just be aware that I'm going to be using my influence as well to find out who this man is and where he's from.
Yes, I'm sure you'll be able to manage that just fine. Although I don't suppose you still have a way of speaking to His Royal Highness?
Oh, he seems to smirk a bit. That coal's already been made.
Ah, yes. I was wondering if you kept up with Fruity. Easiest way to get to him, I suppose.
Already been made. And when I mean dig in, we're going to find out what's going on. It looks bad for them, too.
Yes, it rather does, I suppose. Just let me know what you find out, if you find things out before I do.
Oh, of course. Of course, just... I don't suppose you'll be around here, so I'll have to call Kensington.
Ah, yes. We are taking a bit of a trip, you know, so I don't know where I'll be, but people will know how to find me.
Wonderful. Well then, sleep well, and we'll see you off in the morning.
Yes. Sleep. That. See you in the morning, Raymond.
Indeed. He stands up and turns around and heads out. So, for the rest of the folks at Northbrook, how are you availing yourself of the hospitality here?
I think Fraser will, once his duties are performed, he'll go and head down to the kitchens and make himself known to the staff down there, catch up on all the gossip of Maplebrook in the last while since he's last been there. But also, I think he will attempt to, as subtly as he can, just get a little bit of see if he can get a bit of a background in exactly how people feel about this break-in and what anybody might know about what's going on in the house. if there's anything that is unspoken, but that the servants know about, but obviously discretion would prevail.
This is the general breakdown you'd probably get from them. Many of them are quite rightly spooked by the fact that there was a break-in. They have mentioned that there has been some changes as far as the way the Earl has decided to do things.
Mm-hmm.
So he's had people get up sometimes in the night and just check doors and check the halls afterwards, which of course staff is more than happy to do because they want to live someplace that's safe as well.
Mm-hmm.
But he has also dialed back his social engagements.
All right.
And they see that as something rather recent. So the break-in, again, it was a little while ago, but the actual change in his social calendar hasn't happened, didn't really start until maybe a week or two ago.
I would imagine as well that the gamekeeper and his staff would be keeping a close eye on the estate itself and the grounds around the house. I'm assuming that they haven't seen any signs of anyone within the grounds that shouldn't be there, other than perhaps the odd poacher who they would obviously deal with in the usual fashion.
So the games master has said that there has been no poaching as of probably in the past 2 or 3 months. They're keeping a pretty sharp eye on what goes on in the grounds, especially now. They've actually purchased a few more dogs just to round out a bit more, to have a few more eyes and ears, he says, and noses as well.
That will be very suitable. So yeah, Fraser will nod appreciatively at that. He knows that the staff at Maplebrook are by and large very experienced and very efficient, good at their jobs, and pretty loyal to the family as well.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to tread on any toes while he's there. He'll listen more than he'll talk, I think, basically. See how what the general feeling is, if people are kind of a little bit tense and on edge or anything like that.
It doesn't seem so much that people are on edge as much as they were. Most of the staff here have tried to put it behind them.
Mm-hmm.
They've tried to move on with. They probably use a lot of well-worn lines that you've used before. Well, tomorrow's a new day, and there's business to be done, and
absolutely, yeah. At least said soonest mended.
Pretty much. Okay. And then Giles, what would you be doing that evening? I mean, there's obviously staff there that would serve you with any number of drinks you might be interested in, or if you're going to play sentry to the professor as he sleeps,
Once the professor turns in, I'm going to go ahead and just check his door, put a small hair across the door, as they do, to make sure it's not disturbed. And then I will turn in for the evening and I'll sleep lately.
Yeah, that seems probably pretty reasonable. All right, then. Then what we'll do is we'll dial the clock forward. Lady Elisabeth, as you continue your search of the office and what may come afterwards, it's fairly clear that if the key was here, it's either been moved or the key was never here. Even a tertiary study and inspection of some of the other rooms you knew your father would go in relatively often, you don't see anything that fits the locking mechanism, at least from what you've seen of it. If there is a key, you don't believe it's here.
Well, that's disappointing. If I've checked all the normal places, then I would go back up to my room and probably not sleep because I'm feeling a little on edge from what I remembered earlier, so I'm still processing all of those things. So I'm going to settle down in bed and look through this book that the professor gave me in case it shows me something else.
Yeah, the breakdown of the book is rather fascinating. So even a few hours spent in it seems to be separated into 9 different parts. It is based in some rather dry reading. So this is a 15th century or so take on mathematics, modern mathematics. A lot of that is very difficult to get through. just in the sense that they're essentially talking about the theory of mathematics and how it could grow from a very old lens. So there are many accepted ideas in this book that are now, okay, yeah, this makes total sense to me because I have been to school. I understand mathematics, but this is like high form, highbrow theory. And so reading beyond the page is, you kind of have to go back to the start of it, and you have to try to get grounded in what they want to talk about. But there are some relatively interesting pieces that you are able to pull out that first night. And one of them is somewhat of a graphical image. It's a figure, right? It's signified by the letter A. This first figure is called Figure A, they say. It contains 9 principles, namely goodness, greatness, and etc. And then 9 letters, so B, C, D, E, etc. Figure is in a circle. So basically what you see is the letter A in a very Gothic handwritten style. And then there are multiple circles that encircle it. And within those circles that encircle it, there are words. But goodness, greatness, duration, power, wisdom, will, virtue, truth, and glory. You get a very ecclesiastic feel from the page, too. And it's fairly clear, too, that the writer was trying to stay within the bounds of what would likely be acceptable by the Vatican. There's a lot of how this correlates to God and why God wants us to learn this and those through lines. It is pretty easy sleeping material if you choose to make it so.
Yes, I think I try to take some notes and work through it, and may occasionally mutter, "Wish the professor spoke Latin." But I imagine it eventually puts me to sleep.
It does. It does eventually put you to sleep. So the group at Maplebrook wake up the next day. Unless there's anything specific that they need to do, you'd be fed and cared for before making your way back to London.
Can't think of anything else. I'd like to get out as quickly as possible before my sister-in-law comes downstairs.
Not far from that, geographically speaking. Outside of Hyde Park, Maggie is waking up after a relatively fraught day. But you wake up well rested. You don't know if it was the wine or if it was this strange device that your aunt and her friends brought. But you seem really well rested.
I would, I might lay in bed for a little while and just kind of, soak in the morning before getting out and getting dressed and going downstairs to see what's going on for the day.
Okay. You soak in the morning as best you can. It's strangely a little bit sun-kissed in the morning. Even though it's cool outside, the beams of light that come through the window are very pleasant. And while you're still tucked well under the covers, because it's still relatively winter here in England, it is pleasant to spend an hour or so just letting your body awaken rather than being, pushed awake by some other force. Traveling downstairs, though, is another matter. And you can tell that you're likely going to need something to awaken your senses. You seem a bit dulled. It's as if yesterday was a bit, maybe a little bit too stressful.
Yeah, I wonder if Aunt Edith, if there's any more of that coffee in the house.
So heading downstairs, you can see that the folks from Paris are still here. They are still asleep, it seems. But Aunt Edith is up, and she is sitting in one of the dining rooms just by herself, quietly. She seems to be working on some knitting.
Oh, yeah, and I'm happy to see her down after we ended the last evening with her in her room. So I will, greet her. Oh, Aunt Edith. And good morning. I'm glad to see you down this morning. I'm still shaking off sleep. Is there any more of that coffee we had yesterday?
Yes. We can have some more brought out. You can see that she has not coffee in front of her. It seems she has tea, but she sets her work down and kind of smooths the front of her dress. It was quite the day yesterday. I'm still trying to piece it all together, honestly.
Me as well, but, I'm hoping that maybe we can put that dreadful event behind us.
She nods.
Is there something that you would like to do today, Aunt Edith?
Oh, I think maybe it was a little too exciting going out yesterday. I think I'm going to maybe take a day to myself here at the house.
I could quite agree with that. I think I may have to go out and get some stuff ready for my upcoming trip. I know you had suggested that I should get some good stationery.
Yes, she seems to brighten for a moment. Yes, you should. You shouldn't miss out on this trip. There is a store not far from here that you should be able to locate some wonderful paper and stationery that they do there, and make sure that you send letters back. I'll want to hear.
Of course, all the time, Aunt Edith. I'm happy to keep you well informed of where I'm at and what we're doing on our journey.
You see a member of staff stops out and they ask you if would you like something to eat? Can get you something to drink. What can I help you with?
Oh, yeah, maybe just something light this morning.
They nod and then turn around. You hear your Aunt Edith pipe up and say, "David, perhaps some of that coffee, yes? She's going to need to get herself kick-started." She kind of smiles.
Yes, indeed. Is there anything I could pick up for you while I'm out, Aunt Edith? I might stop by a few shops just for some extra clothes while I travel.
No, I don't think so. But if you maybe find a book that catches your eye, it's always nice to have something new to read.
Oh, yes, that's a great idea.
Your food is brought out shortly thereafter, and you also get a piping hot cup of this coffee that they've brewed. And it's the waves of it that come off the cup, the steam itself, just the scent and smell is it's intoxicating in a totally different way. You can feel your eyeballs open a bit, and it's difficult to ignore it.
Yeah, Maggie's not used to so much caffeine. But she will, feeling invigorated from the coffee, she'll get herself ready to head out.
So what we'll do then is we'll head you off soon after breakfast, and we'll say timeline-wise that about mid-morning there is the arrival of the folks from Maplebrook back to London. Richard, what are the professor's plans when you return to London?
So the professor has been studying the note that Beddoes gave him, which explains where various parts of the simulacrum can be found. He's come to the conclusion that there's not an awful lot of detail there in some places, with some of them being quite specific in terms of being in a particular museum, and sometimes even the curators are named, but others it's there's just a sort of vague idea as to what country a part may have been taken to. So he's sort of thinking that he might need to visit the library and see if he can maybe get some idea of where these things went, if not explicitly stated in a book, maybe the location of some national museums and that kind of place where that sort of thing might end up.
Very well. So then that also begs the question for Simon. What's the plan for you once Richard decides, well, guess I'm headed to the library?
Well, obviously I'll have to tag along to make sure that the professor stays safe, since his common sense seems to be small or none.
I don't know if it's none, but I mean...
his awareness of everything around him is very not there.
Well, at least you know where you're going, right, Richard? I mean, the British Library, pretty easy for you to find.
Yeah, he'd know where that is.
I would say so. So the two of you are off in that direction, and then I don't want to make any assumptions, of course, so Lady Elisabeth, are you and Miss Fraser going back to Kensington?
Yes, I'm going to head back home so I can rest a little bit, but I also want to speak with Fraser about some of the things that I've learned, and I'd rather not do that in public.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'll have telephoned before we left Maplebrook and made arrangements for Mr. Armstrong to pick us up from the station in order to get us back to the house.
Yeah, he does so. He's there waiting for you when you arrive off the platform.
Mm-hmm.
And he settles the both of you into the auto and then prepares to take you back. Any parting words between the two groups then before you leave, or is it just piss off and move on? No, I'm kidding, of course.
Professor,
Yes.
do come by for tea tomorrow. I'd like to discuss this book with you and anything else you find.
Yes, no, that'll be marvellous. Did you manage to discover anything in the book that we looked at yesterday?
I have a few notes, I think. I do wish you read Latin. It's so very mathematical. But a few things I can show you.
Oh, that'll be marvellous. Thank you.
I'd like to take Mr. Fraser aside while they're all talking. Tap him on the shoulder.
Yes, Mr. Griffith. Can I assist you?
This Alexander fellow.
Alexander. Yes.
The timing of this is suspect, and I don't believe in coincidences.
My mind was travelling along similar tracks, so to speak. And what is your thinking?
Do you think you might have some time away where the lady could be safe and you and I could discuss this? It may require some more hands-on.
I see. Well, let us get back to Kensington. I'll speak with the staff there, and I'll speak with her ladyship and see if I can arrange a little time off, and we'll discuss in further detail. Where shall we meet? Where would suit you, sir?
I am not familiar with this city, sir. You will have to pick. I'll be escorting the professor, of course. You know what might be perfect, sir? I understand that the professor may be taking tea tomorrow with Lady Elisabeth.
Yes, I understand that is their intention, yes.
Would it be possible you and I could go to the kitchen and discuss this?
Oh, well, of course, yes. If you'd like to come to the house, I'm sure that can be arranged. Or you could come to my rooms in the house as well.
Excellent, sir.
Let's do that. I have your telephone number, I believe, do I not?
Or the professor's, either is fine.
And did you have ours, so that shouldn't be a problem. Well, let us say, I believe that 4 o'clock, I think, or perhaps a little earlier, Mr. Courtney's coming over. I'll telephone you anyway. I'll speak to her ladyship and I'll see what time's convenient, and I'll telephone you and let you know.
Of course, sir.
Jolly good. Well, safe journey, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Excellent. You have a good evening, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Griffith. Same to yourself.
All right. I would like Richard and Miss Bellinger to roll luck for me.
Can do. 66 against 65. Yeah.
That's a tough one. Of course, it's a luck roll. You can't spend luck on it.
I know.
I rolled a 26 under 83.
Well, that's hard success then, yeah?
It is indeed.
Okay. So, Richard, you're of one mind, and that is to getting to the library to do some real research. Because as wonderful as all of the conjecture is, you need the vast resources that the British Library offers. And it's on your trip, on your walk there, not far from there, that you see a familiar face. And that's of Miss Bellinger. She's coming out of a shop. It looks like a stationery shop.
Oh, Maggie, I say, hello.
Oh, hi, Richard.
What are you doing here? Not that that's a problem, you understand.
Of course. I was just out doing some shopping, picking up some things for our trip.
Ah, good idea.
Quite looking forward to it. What are you doing here?
Well, I'm on the way to the library.
Oh.
Again, yes.
Something quite dreadful happened when I was at the library yesterday.
dreadful in the library?
Yes, me and Aunt Edith went there to do a little bit of reading and research ourselves, and we found a dead body.
A dead body in the library?
You see some of the people passing by, like, look at you, look in your direction.
Yes, a dead body. He was skinned.
I beg your pardon? A dead... What did you say?
A skinned man.
What? A dead man without skin?
Yes.
Did you call the police? How absolutely unbelievable.
We didn't call the police, but we screamed, and yes, the library attendant, they called the police, I'm sure.
Well, that must have given you a terrible fright.
Yes, we did leave quite fast because Aunt Edith was upset. I had to phone the police later because I took something from a crime scene.
What did you take?
Well, this is going to sound strange, Richard.
Probably no stranger than things are already.
Well, it was a piece of skin with writing on it.
A piece of skin with writing. This just gets stranger and stranger.
It does it. It was a piece of, I'm assuming, the man's skin. It said, "The skinless one will not be denied."
That sounds like a sick joke.
It does.
Oh dear. Well, I do hope they find the man that did it.
I do as well. I actually, I was beside myself last night, and my mind was racing, and all I could think to do was to draw what we had seen.
Ooh.
I could show you if you'd like.
It's a copy, is it?
Well,
you made a copy?
Yes. Well,
oh, yes.
No, it's the picture that I drew.
Oh, yes. No, if you could.
Yes, and I imagine, so Maggie has a journal, which is where she does all her sketching, and she would probably have it with her so she can kind of jot down notes and write and draw as she goes. So I guess on the street, Maggie would pull out a drawn picture of a dead man to show Richard. It's right, it's here. Here.
Ooh. Wow. Yes. So what does Richard see on the drawing?
So what you see on this wonderful piece of paper is a exceedingly detailed model of a man whose top layer of flesh has been removed from his head, likely down to about the collarbone. And what has been left are all of the muscles, all of the cheek fat, all of the sinew in the clefts of the cheeks and the muscles that are left. Not much, of course, on the brow, as there's mostly just skull plate there. It's as anatomical as you can imagine having seen in other textbooks. And you can tell, too, that she's captured the juiciness of the image. There's almost a waxen texture to the page. And it also seems to bubble in you a bit of flutter from your stomach. The image takes on so much of a real sense, it shocks you to the core.
My, the man's been flayed alive. This is grotesque. Richard looks to Maggie and decides to sort of. The drawing is it's very good, but it's very lifelike.
Why, thank you. Yes, it was. Give me and Aunt Edith quite the fright.
I can imagine. Was there any blood?
If I remember correctly, there wasn't. Correct, Mike?
Yeah. There wasn't any blood.
No, now that you mention it, that was quite strange. I don't remember there being any blood.
Oh dear. You wouldn't care to come to the library with me, would you?
Well, if you need an escort to the library, I would be happy to do that, Richard.
I would be interested to see, where this happened. I mean, it's not the kind of thing that you'd see in a library.
Yes, I never expected to see a dead man anywhere, let alone a library.
Trouble does seem to follow us at the moment.
that I did find it quite strange as well.
Yes.
Well, if you're up for it, I'm up for it. I can show you where it occurred.
Yes, I think we should maybe look from a distance. Yes. Richard's looking notably shaken. The library, which is one of his sort of safe havens, one of his little sanctuaries, has suddenly got dead bodies and things in it. He's pretty disturbed.
Yeah, you can tell too that the folks who are passing by here on the street are some of them are reacting. Some of them reacted to the image they saw on the page.
Yeah, Richard probably wouldn't be paying any attention to these other people whatsoever.
Yeah, Maggie probably wouldn't either. She's engrossed in conversation with Richard, and Richard is seeing a dead body.
That's right. All right, so off to the library with the two. Oh, wait, three of you, right? Because Simon, ever the gargoyle waiting around the corner, has seems to be escorting the professor. So yeah, Maggie, that is something you would notice. You would notice that Simon is here as well.
Oh, if I see him, if I notice him and he's not totally lurking, then I would greet him, of course, to be polite. Oh, Simon, Mr. Griffith. Oh, I'm running into both of you here today, I guess. What a coincidence.
Howdy, ma'am. I am merely the professor's keeper.
And Maggie will kind of laugh at that. Oh, well, I was just about to escort Richard to the library. Did you overhear our conversation?
Yeah, that would be impolite, ma'am.
Well, I was just going to show Richard where I found a dead body at the library.
A dead body? You hear someone say.
Ma'am?
Yes.
Out in public on the street might not be the best place to be discussing this.
Well, I would just imagine that if something this dreadful happened, it must be in the news, or word would get around.
Well, let's head on over to the library and you can show us. And thank you, ma'am.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah, the travel down the street is not far at all. So you arrive back at the library. This is a place that you know fairly well now.
Yes. So it was in here, and I was sitting at this table with Aunt Edith, and she left briefly, and I noticed a gentleman staring at me, and I stared back at him, but he didn't move, and I got quite scared. I went to check on Aunt Edith, and she would have none of this gentleman intimidating me, and when she went to confront him, we noticed he wasn't moving, and I went to touch his shoulder, and that's when I saw that he had no skin. Oh, we should talk quietly in the library.
Yes, I was about to say, yes, people might overhear you.
So, Maggie, the scene is very much the same in here as it was the last time. It's a relatively thin crowd for the day, although there is probably 2 or 3 more people in there than there were the last time. The table in question, you can see, is vacated, so there's no one there.
Yeah.
But it doesn't keep your eyes from drawing back to that table rather frequently, waiting to see an image that just won't leave your mind.
Yeah. And I thought he was just a library patron. He looked like he was reading a book.
Was he? I mean, clearly he couldn't have been actually reading, but did he have a book with him?
Well, there was a book open in front of him, and then the piece of skin was in front of the book. It was silly, though. It looked like he was reading Arabian Nights.
Oh.
I don't understand what kind of sick joke it was.
It may not have been a joke. Sounds like it was a warning.
Yes.
I don't know who or what they would be warning of.
Perhaps we should see if we can borrow Arabian Nights to see if there may be something else there in it.
So I suppose that you could.
Yes.
If it hasn't been taken by the police.
Well, there's only one way to find out. So Richard will, at some point, probably not straight away, try and get hold of a copy of Arabian Nights.
Okay.
If indeed it is in this library at all.
The attendant at the desk says there was a copy checked out a few days ago. It's not been returned yet.
Ma'am, could I ask who checked out the copy?
She goes into the record. It's a Stephen Wentworth.
Thank you, ma'am.
Richard, when she says Stephen Wentworth's name, you know exactly who that is. It's a student of the professor's. He's a bit younger than you, but you know that he took class with the professor for several years.
Well, this is most disturbing. Thank you. Thank you for that. Richard will say to Maggie and Simon, somewhere away from the desk at least anyway, this note that the pedos gave us, I really think that maybe split up and do a little research. There are several places mentioned in the note the pedos gave us that are a bit sort of sparse with detail. For example, it says here Napoleon's soldiers carried a piece into Venice, but that's all we have. So maybe we should look for addresses of Venetian libraries and any sort of idea as to where some of these pieces might be. Apparently in Sofia there was a piece that was hidden. Now, I'm wondering if it might be possible to establish where these sorts of things were hidden and maybe get some ideas of libraries or collectors or something like that. Does that make sense? Richard looks up sort of expectantly at Maggie and Simon.
Well, it does make sense. Actually, the last time that I was here with Aunt Edith, it was to do research about some of the places that we'd be traveling to, and that's when I found a dead body.
Oh, good thinking. Hey, you're way ahead of me there.
Yes, but I can't get that the image and feeling out of my mind. I'm not sure if I feel comfortable staying here for too long.
Oh, I certainly wouldn't want to put you to any to any trouble there.
Professor, how about you and I escort Ms. Bevenger back to her home?
Yes, I think that would be a splendid idea.
Yes, I would be happy to help with the research and looking through any books that you are able to get from the library. I just don't feel safe or comfortable doing it here.
Oh no, I quite understand. I mean, that must have been an awful shock.
Yes, it was.
So I guess my question is are you staying long enough to make a library use roll, or are you taking Maggie back to Hyde Park and then returning to do research?
I think Richard would favour taking Maggie home first and then sort of coming back.
Okay, so if there's no qualms about or no arguments, then we'll just redline the travel.
Actually, I would just like to do one thing, if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
So Maggie showed all of us where she found the body, and I'm just wanting to get a very good look at the area and see if there's anything I can see that anybody else has missed.
Okay, yeah, you can make a spot hidden roll if you want.
That'll be a 73 over 40, and I don't feel like spending 33 luck.
To be fair to you and your investigative eyes, it looks like the area has been clean relatively recently. So nothing seems out of place or laying around a bit.
Okay. Well, and as I understand you're talking about redlining, but my other question is on the way out, since Maggie did mention this, if I can, I'd like to grab a newspaper and just tuck it under my arm. I'll look at it later.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. So the three of you return Maggie to Hyde Park, and then the two of you are coming back to the library to maybe gain some materials that the three of you could research?
Yeah, that's the plan. So whatever seems relevant to Richard for the places that we're going to visit.
Crank it up, Professor. Give me a library use roll.
That's a 43 under his rather stellar 75, so that's a success.
Very good. Well, the first place that you know you'll be stopping is likely going to be Paris. And so finding information on Paris is, quite frankly, pretty easy. I guess the question is what information specifics are you looking for in regards to Paris? And I can try to help you out.
So we know that the part that was in Paris was at some point owned by a Comte Fenelek, so we're really looking for anything to do with him rather than any artifacts and that kind of thing.
You would know after the investigative research that you'll do here temporarily is you're going to have to stop into the Great Library in Paris, and so that's going to be in the center of Paris at 58 Rue de Richelieu. And you know that, notwithstanding what's here in front of you, the greatest library in the world might be in Paris. As far as Comte Fenelek here in England, you don't see any specific notes on him. It seems, at least from Beto's notes, that he's some sort of noble that was around during the French Revolution. So it's likely, too, that the library in Paris is going to have better information on him as well. But you don't find any comment of him here, and there's no books that mention him. There's no name drops here, at least within the French Revolution era pieces that you have.
Okay, that makes sense. And does Richard get a feel for maybe any of the other places, or does he think that a similar thing, would be appropriate? So look in some sort of information place, library, talk to people, whatever it is, and would sort of bear more fruit in the countries themselves. Is that the feeling he's getting, or?
You feel like you are plagued by time. And what I mean by that specifically is that Richard feels like all of the books that might be useful on these topics, right? Given that it's, quite frankly, it's a rather shadowy topic, right? The professor probably spent weeks, months, maybe even years researching this. And so they're not going to be widely distributed as far as their ideas, right? Because then everyone would have them. So it is likely that you are looking for needles and haystacks in specific stacks that you're not physically near. And so travel is going to be required.
No, that makes sense. So the one remaining thing there is Arabian Nights, borrowed by Stephen Wentworth.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Richard will say to Simon in hushed tones in the library, yes, I think we should pay a visit to this student of mine, Stephen Wentworth. Arabian Nights certainly wasn't on the curriculum.
I was just thinking that too, Professor.
I don't believe I have an address for him, but certainly the university will.
Not difficult for the two of you to track down. Really, honestly, for you, Richard, being a professor there at the university, it would be simply walking into the front door and asking to see a student file. You're a professor. You're more than able to see admission files.
That's exactly what he'll do.
Okay. So it takes you probably about an hour between the two places to collect the information, and then getting over to university, you see that he doesn't live too terribly far. It seems the students, the admission office, I should say, even has a telephone number for him.
I'm going to stop Richard while we're at the university, and I'm going to head up to Dr. Smith's and Professor Courtney's offices and have a look-see.
Okay, well, I mean, they're two separate offices for sure.
Understood, but I want to see if they've been tossed, specifically like the professor's house was.
So when you get up to Smith's offices, that door is locked. So you're not sure if anyone's tossed it without an attempt to either getting the door open or in some way, or surreptitiously circumventing the locking mechanism. You could always go grab Lady Elisabeth's cane, I suppose.
Would Richard have a key, being as he knows Professor Smith rather well?
You'd have a key to your own offices, and although you're not probably sure if the keys are different. So if the two of you are together, it's be up to him whether or not you want to try your key on Smith's office.
I have this key here. Should we give it a go?
I think that might be an idea.
So rather than try it himself, Richard will rather sort of shamefacedly give the key to Simon to try.
Qualms, Professor?
Well, I mean, wouldn't do for a professor to be seen to be breaking into a colleague's office.
Fair enough. I'll go ahead and try the key.
Tell you what, give me a luck roll.
51 under 59.
All right. So, after a bit of jiggling back and forth and some rattling around in the locking mechanism, the door opens.
Professor, you should stay here and keep an eye out. How's that?
Yes. If anybody approaches, I'll cough and then sort of wander down to my office if that's okay.
That would be fine.
All right. I shall keep watch.
Pull on my gloves.
Okay.
And I step inside and have a look-see.
The offices here are filled with books, papers, all manner of objects that Smith probably picked up along the way. You can tell that there are maps on the wall. There are a lot of professorial items. He has a globe. He has textbooks that he probably considered rather important to him on his desk. But the room isn't very large by any means. It's probably no bigger than, say, maybe 8 by 12.
But it doesn't look out of order.
No, it doesn't look tossed, I'll say that. It looks like this was a working professor's office who probably didn't clean very much because he was busy.
I'll check the windows, the lock mechanisms, see if there's any scratches or scrapes.
No, doesn't seem to be. I mean, maybe there's a bit of a tarnish from age, but nothing specific.
And with the door inside, I'm assuming it opens inwards or outwards?
Oh, it opens inwards.
Inwards. Okay, so I can look at the lock kneeling at it without being seen in the corridor kneeling.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and look at it there, see, and again, any scratches or scrapes on the lock mechanism.
You can go ahead and give me a spot hidden roll. Or locksmithing if you have it, or lock picking.
That would be a hard success, 16 under 40.
It does not appear that the internal mechanisms here have been sullied in any way.
And is there anything on the professor's desk that looks interesting?
There are a fair amount of notes, so full sheaf papers, notes on certain literary subjects. It looks like he maybe had a test bed of notes here on his presentation that he was making to the Challenger Lecture Series, but even they are more like hand notes, scratch notes, rather than full-on outlines. There's a couple of scraps of paper in and out, but there is also another tattered piece of paper here that's separate from the rest. It seems that it's more of a parchment paper than it's an actual common everyday sheaf of paper. This is something different. It looks a bit singed, maybe eaten away.
Pick it up and look at it.
So it seems to be a very delicate piece of parchment. It looks like it has seen some damage in the past. Let me get an idea of what it looks like physically. So the note is not in English, that's for sure. And I guess the question is what other languages does Simon speak, if any?
French.
Okay, it's definitely not French.
I'm noting this. I'm going to look in his wastebasket to see if there's anything else that may have been thrown away.
No, crumpled up pieces of paper, but nothing that's that directly reminds you of something like this.
All right, I'll take a handkerchief out of my pocket or my book on Greek, whichever one. Do I think that if I were to press this piece of parchment in a book, that it would crumble away, or it would just be safe and flat?
It would probably be safe and flat.
I'll take out my pocketbook on Greek that I purchased, and I'll slide it gently in there and put it back in my pocket.
Make me a spot hidden roll.
27 under 40.
You slide the piece of paper into the pocketbook, and you realize that the text that's on that parchment paper and the text that's on your pocketbook in Greek are exceedingly similar in the way the fonts are made.
Excellent. All right, I carefully put that back in my pocket. I will have something to discuss with the folks tomorrow at tea.
Wonderful. So are you going to exit the room then?
We will exit the room and set the lock so it'll lock itself shut when we get back out.
Richard, he comes out of the office.
Was everything in order?
We'll discuss it back at the hotel. Let's check your office now.
Oh, yes. Yes, quite.
Okay. That's easy to get into. You don't even have to pick a lock.
Richard goes to Simon. Do you have my key?
Of course. Here you go, sir.
Thank you. It wouldn't do to break into one's own office. And Richard will turn the key.
You turn the key, open the door, and you step into the remnants of a hurricane.
Oh, my.
Your office has been turned upside down.
This is terrible. And I'm going to just sort of furtively start looking for things that I'd really miss that may have been taken, just to make sure everything's still there.
Well, it doesn't seem like anything's been taken. It doesn't seem like much of anything has been seriously broken. But what clearer eye of the storm is here sits on your desk. And it's a piece of some type of parchment that sits on your desk. It's maybe just a few inches long, maybe a few inches high. But there's definitely some text on it. It draws your attention immediately.
So I will read it.
So just leaning over and picking it up. And it's done in a very careful handwriting. And it says, Stephen was a naughty boy.
I shall show this to Simon. What do you think it means? Oh. And then a thought occurs to Richard that the person reading the book in the library without the skin may well have been his student Stephen.
Simon, your first, like when you approach the desk, when you look at it, the first thing you see is skin. It's not paper. It's not parchment.
I'm not going to mention anything to Richard because I don't want him to lose his mind. I am going to, at this point, take the newspaper out from underneath my arm and flip through it quickly to see if I can find an article on the body in the library.
Even after a quick read through, given the fact that a body found in the library here in central London would be a page oneer probably, you don't see any mention of it.
Okay. Professor, let me go ahead and take this, and you continue looking around at the office and see if anything else is missing. I'm going to check the drawers of your desk and also the door to your office.
Oh, yes. Yes, of course. And Richard will start furtively tidying everything.
Again, like I did for Dr. Smith's office, I'm looking around Richard's office to see if where they entered, if they had a key, or if they picked the locks or the windows.
Okay, so a quick examination of the door sort of reveals what's happened. The lock was not picked. That's pretty clear. It looks like the lock cylinder and the handle itself was accelerated with such pressure that the internal mechanism in the lock gave away.
All right, and I'm going to check his desk too. Do I see anything on his drawers?
I mean, he's probably in the middle of picking up papers, but when you can get in there, there doesn't seem to be... I mean, his drawers have been gone through. Some of them have been pulled out pretty far. Whoever was here was searching for something. Like I said, it looks like a hurricane set down in here.
Professor, did you have anything important in here?
Nothing valuable. I mean, there are my notes and my research work, of course. The many hours I've spent on this, but nothing appears to be missing.
Excuse me, Professor. I don't mean to put down your research. Anything that is related to the atom given to you by Smith in here. Obviously, your work is important.
Well, no. I mean, I've barely been here at all. In fact, since Professor Smith gave it to me, life's been somewhat of a whirlwind since.
Is there anything you need from this room?
I wouldn't want to lose anything, but I don't think there's anything I need for the trip. No.
Excellent. I think we need to be on our way.
Yes, I quite agree. And just before we leave, Richard's going to just try and tidy a few more papers away so it's just a little bit better when he gets back.
It's very difficult for you to help yourself from cleaning up a little bit. You managed to get a few sections of it, maybe drawers pushed back in, some things tidied a bit, but this place is going to take some work. The feeling you get when the two of you exit the university here is definitely unsettling in multiple ways. For Simon, obviously, the unsettling nature of having the person he's been trying to protect not only have a dead body show up at his house, but have his office get tossed, have a student of his likely murdered, is rather unsettling. For Richard, you can't really get past the feeling of being violated personally. You've never had someone break into your office and turn everything upside down, but now you've had a student attacked.
Professor, I have 2 more questions for you. One question, do you have anything at your house you need for the trip?
Well, clothing, of course.
You can buy clothing. Is there anything else you need at the house you need for the trip?
No, nothing other than my clothes, really.
All right, I'll make a few calls. 2, let's be on our way to Mr. Wentworth's. I have a feeling we need to wrap up before it gets dark.
Would it be as well to check back just to make sure that the house is okay before... I mean, it's rather a long trip we're going on.
Professor, let me make some phone calls and I will get back to you, sir.
Oh, okay. If you think that's the right thing to do.
I do, sir.
We will leave this session here. So I hope that you've enjoyed the episode, and we will see you next time.